What if I told you that one of the most famous and terrifying mysteries in the entire Bible, a story you think you know, has been almost completely misunderstood for centuries? What if the very foundation of that misunderstanding rests on a single Hebrew word that translators and tradition have gotten wrong? I'm not talking about a minor detail. I'm talking about the Nephilim, the giants in the earth, the offspring of angels and human women. That is what you were told. But today, we are going to open the original text, and what we find there will not only change your view of Genesis chapter 6, it will revolutionize how you understand the entire biblical narrative of evil, power, and redemption. This is not a common study. This is the evidence scholars often sidestep because it dismantles a deeply entrenched legend. And it begins with a glaring contradiction in the sacred text that makes the popular story impossible. The common teaching is clear and dramatic. Genesis chapter 6, verses 1 through 4, describes a supernatural invasion. The sons of God, understood as angelic beings, saw the daughters of men, took them as wives, and from these unions were born the Nephilim, the mighty men of old, men of renown. This interpretation, championed by ancient Jewish writers like Philo and the authors of the Book of Enoch, and later adopted by many early church fathers, paints a picture of cosmic treason and genetic corruption that necessitated the flood. It's a compelling, epic story. But here is the contradiction that unravels it all. The text of Genesis chapter 6 in its original Hebrew never actually says that. It never states the Nephilim are the offspring of the sons of God and the daughters of men. Read it slowly. Genesis 6-4 reads, "The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God came into the daughters of man, and they bore children to them. These were the mighty men who were of old, the men of renown." The grammatical structure in Hebrew is disjunctive. It presents two facts existing concurrently in the same era. First, the Nephilim were on the earth. Second, the sons of God were marrying human women. The verse does not grammatically or syntactically link the two statements as cause and effect. The Nephilim are simply present. They are a feature of the landscape. The verse says they were on the earth in those days and also afterward. This also afterward is critical. It means they existed both before and after these marital events. How can they be the product of an event if they predate it? This is the silent scream in the text that tradition has overlooked. The narrative sequence is broken. The Nephilim are not the children being born in the story. They are something else already there. And if they are not the hybrid offspring, then who are, what are they? This single, overlooked grammatical nuance in the Masoretic text forces us to ask the dangerous question: have we built a towering mythology of fallen angels and monster children on a fundamental misreading? The answer lies in a word we all think we know, but have never truly heard in its original voice. To find that answer, we must enter the debate. On one side, you have the traditional angelic interpretation. Its defenders point to the phrase sons of God, or in Hebrew, Bnei Elohim, in Job 1:2-6 and 2-1, and again in Job 38-7. This phrase unequivocally refers to angelic beings presenting themselves before God. It's a strong parallel. They also cite the intertestamental book of Enoch, which elaborates in vivid detail on the angelic rebellion. Furthermore, the New Testament books of Jude, verse 6, and 2 Peter 2-4 are often marshaled, speaking of angels who left their proper dwelling. The argument seems solid, even watertight, but this is where we must perform our first active investigation and refutation. Because when you examine the phrase sons of God within the Pentateuch itself, the first 5 books of Moses, its usage is strikingly different. In Deuteronomy 32-8, in the most ancient manuscript traditions like the Dead Sea Scrolls, the text reads that the Most High fixed the borders of the nations according to the number of the sons of God. Many later manuscripts changed this to sons of Israel, but the older reading is sons of God. And here it is widely understood by scholars like Dr. Michael Heiser to refer to divine beings assigned to nations. Yet in the Genesis 6 context, there is another possibility. The Hebrew word Elohim can mean judges or rulers, as it does in Exodus 21-6 and 22-8-9, where it is translated as the judges. The sons of God could therefore be the sons of the rulers or the tyrannical, godlike elite of the ancient world. This is not a modern invention. The great Jewish commentator Ibn Ezra, in the 12th century, argued for this human political interpretation. So we have two plausible readings, one supernatural, one human. But the text itself gives us the tool to decide. It's the word Nephilim. Let's investigate its root. The word Nephilim comes from the Hebrew root naphal, which means to fall. The immediate assumption is fallen ones, implying fallen angels, but this is where linguistic analysis is crucial. The form Nephilim is not a simple adjective. It is a plural noun derived from the kotel participle form, which can indicate not a state of being, but an action or a characteristic. In Hebrew, a noun formed from naphal could mean those who cause to fall, or those who fall upon. It carries a connotation of violence. Consider its only other use in the Hebrew Bible, outside of Genesis 6, Numbers 13:33. The Israelite spies return from Canaan and report, "We saw the Nephilim, there the descendants of Anak come from the Nephilim, and we seemed to ourselves like grasshoppers." Here, the Nephilim are identified with the giant clans of Canaan, the Anakim. They are presented as a race of formidable, intimidating people, not as angelic hybrids, but as very tall, powerful humans. This is our first major anchor. The biblical text itself, in a later historical book, uses the term Nephilim to describe human giants, not the offspring of angels. Note the silence. The book of Numbers makes no attempt to explain their origin as supernatural. It assumes the reader knows the term from Genesis. So if the Nephilim in Numbers are human giants, then the Nephilim in Genesis must be the same. This begins to point us toward a shocking realization. The sons of God in Genesis 6 may not be angels marrying women at all. They may be something far more human and far more terrifying in its historical reality. But we must pause here. An objection naturally arises. If the sons of God are just human rulers, why would their marriage to ordinary women be such a cataclysmic sin that it leads to God's grief and the flood? The text seems to describe a unique, boundary-shattering evil. This is a valid and powerful objection. And the answer is not that the sin was trivial, but that we have misunderstood the nature of the sin. It wasn't the genetics of the marriage. It was the systemic violence and corruption it represented. To see that, we must now uncover the overlooked evidence that has been hiding in plain sight for 3,000 years. The overlooked evidence is not in a hidden manuscript or a secret code. It is in the immediate literary context of Genesis chapter 6, verses 1 through 4, and the verses that follow. We have been so fixated on the supernatural scandal of verse 2 that we have missed the clear, stated reason for God's judgment in verses 5 and following. Let's read Genesis 6 to 5. The Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every intention of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. And verse 11, now the earth was corrupt in God's sight, and the earth was filled with violence. The Hebrew word is Hamas. It means brutal, unjust, predatory force. This is the stated reason for the flood, not angelic interbreeding, but human violence. Now, reread verse 4 with this in mind. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days. These were the mighty men who were of old, the men of renown. The Hebrew words used are Jibram and Anchi Shem. Jibra means mighty men, warriors, powerful ones. Anchi Shem means men of a name, men of reputation. But in the context of a world filled with Hamas, what kind of reputation would these men have? They were not heroes. They were tyrants. They were the ancient world's warlords, the strongmen who ruled through terror and force. They were those who caused to fall, the Nephilim. They were the ones who fell upon others. This is our first micro-twist. The Nephilim were not the offspring of the sons of God. They were the established, violent power elite already dominating the earth. They were the reason the world was filled with violence. Now consider the sons of God in this light. If they are the human rulers, the Elohim or judges, then their sin in taking any they chose from the daughters of men is not about angelic biology. It is about the raw abuse of power. It is about a ruling class so corrupt, so divorced from God's order, that they treated human beings as property, seizing women to build their harems, consolidating their dynasties of power, This was the ultimate expression of the violence filling the earth. The marriage was not the problem. The predatory, violent seizure was. It was the culmination of a societal collapse where the image of God and humanity was utterly trampled by the powerful. This interpretation is supported by the ancient Aramaic Targums, the early Jewish paraphrases of Scripture. Targum Onkelos, a highly respected 1st century translation, renders sons of God in Genesis 6-2 as sons of the nobles. Targum Neofiti calls them sons of the judges. These are not late Christian reinterpretations. These are ancient Jewish scholarly traditions, recognizing the human political dimension of the text. They saw the Nephilim as giants, as mighty warriors, and the sons of God as the corrupt aristocratic class. This reframes the entire pre-flood narrative. The crisis was not a genetic pollution from outside humanity, but a moral corruption from within it. The seed of the woman was being crushed under the heel of violent human tyrants, the Nephilim. And this changes everything about how we read the flood. God's judgment was not on angelic contamination, but on human evil. It was a reset of a human system that had become utterly predatory. Pause and consider the weight of this. If true, it means the core problem of Genesis 6 is not a unique supernatural event that can never be repeated. It is the timeless human tendency toward violent tyranny, the strong exploiting the weak, the powerful corrupting God's created order. This makes the story not a bizarre ancient anomaly, but a mirror held up to every civilization that elevates power over justice. Before we go further and connect this to a stunning pattern that runs through the entire Bible, I need to ask you something. If this investigation is already shifting how you see one of the Bible's deepest mysteries, if it's making you question what you were taught, then take a second to like this video and subscribe to this channel. What comes next is where we see this hidden thread weave through Scripture, from Genesis to Revelation, and it will show you why this understanding is not just academic, it is critically urgent for us today. Now we escalate the revelation. If the Nephilim were violent human tyrants, and their nature is defined by causing others to fall, then we should see this pattern echoed throughout Scripture. And we do. The most unexpected connection lies in the New Testament, in a verse almost nobody links to Genesis 6, 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 8. Paul is warning the Corinthian church against sexual immorality, and he uses an example from Israel's history. He says, "We must not indulge in sexual immorality as some of them did, and 23,000 fell in a single day." He is referencing Numbers chapter 25, where Israelite men engaged with Moabite women and worshipped Baal of Peor. But look at the language. They fell. The Greek word is epesein, from pito, to fall. It's the same concept, but the deeper connection is typological. The sin of Peor involved leaders, the heads of the people according to Numbers 25-4, leading the community into corruption through illicit relationships, a direct parallel to the sons of God in Genesis 6, leading the world into corruption. This is not a coincidence. The biblical authors saw the pattern: powerful men, abusive relationships, societal collapse. But the second and more staggering twist comes from the Hebrew prophets. Consider the prophecy of Isaiah chapter 14. It is directed against the king of Babylon. In verse 12, he taunts, "How you are fallen from heaven, O day star, son of dawn." The Hebrew for fallen is naphalta, from the same root naphal as Nephilim. This figure, often associated with Satan, is called he who made the earth tremble, who made kingdoms shake, Isaiah 14:16. He is the archetypal one who causes to fall. He is the spiritual prototype of the Nephilim spirit, the lust to ascend to God's throne, to dominate, to be like the Most High, Isaiah 14:14. This is the true nature of the Nephilim. It is not a race of giants. It is a spirit of violent, autocratic tyranny that seeks to usurp God's authority and trample his image in humanity. This spirit manifested in the pre-flood warlords, in the giant clans of Canaan, in the kings of Babylon and Assyria, and ultimately in the cosmic adversary himself. Now we must preempt the second major objection. If the Nephilim were just human warlords, why does the text in Genesis 6-1 call them mighty men who were of old, men of renown? Doesn't that sound positive? This is a critical point. The Hebrew does not assign a moral value to Jibram or Anshishem. They are descriptors of power and fame, not righteousness. In the context of a world filled with violence, their renown was infamy. Their might was oppression. The Bible consistently uses Gibber to describe powerful warriors, both good and bad. But when the context is universal evil, the connotation is clear. They were renowned for their terror, like the later king Og of Bashan, whose giant bed frame was kept as a trophy of fear, Deuteronomy 3:11. The silence here is also evidence. The text does not say God was concerned about their genetic makeup. It says he was grieved by the wickedness and violence of humanity. The Nephilim were the epitome of that violence. This reframes Block 1 entirely. The contradiction we saw, the Nephilim existing before the marriage, is now resolved. They were not the product of the sin. They were the pre-existing climate of tyranny that enabled the sons of God to act with such impunity. The marriages were a symptom of the disease, not the disease itself. The disease was the spirit of the Nephilim, the fallen, violent will to power. This understanding unifies the passage. It fits the immediate context of God's judgment on violence. It aligns with the use of the term in Numbers, and it reveals a continuous spiritual battle throughout the Bible, not a one-time genetic event. But what does this mean for you sitting here today? That is where we must now turn for the ultimate resolution. The definitive resolution is this: the story of the Nephilim is not an ancient mythological footnote. It is the Bible's foundational diagnosis of the cancer of human civilization when it turns from God. It is the story of the powerful few, infected with the spirit of the fallen one, who seek to dominate, consume, and trample the weak. This spirit did not die with the flood. It reappeared in Canaan. It spoke through Pharaoh. It ruled through Nebuchadnezzar. And according to the prophetic scriptures, it will reach its final, concentrated manifestation in the last days. The Apostle John, in Revelation 13, describes a beast from the sea with 10 horns, representing a global empire, and a mouth speaking great boasts. This is the ultimate political manifestation of the Nephilim spirit, a system of violent, idolatrous tyranny that demands worship. The giants are gone, but the spirit that animated them is not. It is the spirit of Antichrist. This has a direct, practical application to your life and faith today. If you reduce the Nephilim to angel-human hybrids, you relegate the lesson to a supernatural oddity. But if you see them as the biblical archetype of violent, God-usurping power, then you begin to see the same pattern in every age. You see it in totalitarian regimes that slaughter the innocent. You see it in corporate empires that crush the poor. You see it in any system where human beings are treated as commodities to be seized and used, where the powerful take any they choose. Your calling as one who perceives this is not to hunt for giants' bones or decode more angel lore. It is to recognize this spirit at work in the world and to stand against it in the name of the one who came to break its power. Jesus Christ is the ultimate answer to the Nephilim. He is the true Son of God, who did not come to seize power, but to give his life as a ransom. He confronted the spiritual powers, not by matching their violence, but by submitting to the cross and rising in victory. In him, the violent, falling curse of the Nephilim is overturned by the humble, rising power of resurrection. So the viral question you must carry with you is this: what if the real legacy of the Nephilim is not a hidden bloodline, but a recognizable spirit of violent domination that still seeks to rule the world? And what if your role is to discern its face in your own generation and stand with the Lamb who was slain? If this revelation changes how you read the Bible, if it shifts your understanding from chasing mysteries to confronting timeless spiritual strongholds, then I need you to act. Drop a comment below and tell me, does recognizing the Nephilim as a spirit of tyranny change how you see the conflicts in our world today? Share this video with someone who is tired of sensational myths and hungry for biblical truth. And subscribe, because next, we will uncover how this same spirit is directly linked to a terrifying prophecy in Daniel that is shaping our geopolitical landscape right now. And subscribe, because next we will uncover how this Enochian key unlocks the mystery of the seven thunders in the book of Revelation.